won't have peace. I'll be worried about you all the time.
That's just love. Nothing you can do about that.
Andor, a Star Wars story, has proven to be surprisingly excellent for many reasons, some of which we've spoken about here on the Science Fiction channel, including how Andor makes Star Wars real in a way that it has never been before, and also how it fulfills the political promise of Star Wars in a way that no other Star Wars story has done before either. And there's another thing that Andor does better than any other previous Star Wars story, and that's the quality of the writing. Yes, there has been excellent writing in Star Wars before, of a kind, but Star Wars A New Hope is excellent mythic storytelling in the Joseph Campbellian hero's journey mold. The Empire Strikes Back is character-driven adventure storytelling and has some of the best qualities of space opera and planetary romance brought to it by the great science fiction writer Lee Brackett. But there's something that Andor does, which really I don't think we've ever seen in Star Wars before. And that's the quality of dramatic writing, and especially the writing of scenes. Season 1 of Andor is filled with amazing scenes. One of the first great scenes is between Luthen Rael and Cassian Andor, as Luthen awakens Cassian to his revolutionary potential to get him to join the rebellion. Then another amazing scene is between Luthen Rael and Mon Mothma, where Mon Mothma has been slowly lured into the rebellion, and Luthen confronts her with the full risks that she's taking on as a privileged member of society. But the greatest scene in Andor Season 1 comes in Episode 7 between Cassian Andor and his mother, Marva Andor. And it's a scene of multiple layers of depth.
I hear you.
Today I want to explore the scene writing in Andor, a Star Wars story, as the first Writing Wednesday. This Writing Wednesday was supposed to be last Wednesday. I got distracted by the Marxist messaging in Andor, a Star Wars story. So while I can't guarantee that we're going to manage it every Wednesday, I'm hoping that these can be brief nuggets of wisdom into the art and craft of storytelling and writing that won't be able to go into the full depth of these subjects. So if you do want to go deeper, right here on the Science Fiction channel, you can find my courses, The Rhetoric of Story, which is the outcome of 10 years of research into storytelling, and Advanced Science Fiction and Fantasy, Writing the 21st Century Myth, all about how to go about creating modern mythic stories. And these are right here on the channel, available entire for channel members. So just pop down there, become a channel member, and you can access those in full.
You shouldn't be here.
Someone turned me in.
You don't know?
No, what?
Tim.
What?
Tim Carter turned you in.
You may be asking, what is a scene? There are two answers to this question. One is that the idea of a scene comes from theatre practice, where, of course, if characters are going to be in a new setting, you need to change the scenery. So each scene is distinguished by the change of scenery, the change of setting in the background. But perhaps a more useful definition of a scene is that it's a section of a story where something significant changes. As a writer and a storyteller, you really have two modes of storytelling. One is narrative, where you can move the story along quite quickly. And the other is a scene, where you drop down into the action of a story and you show dialogue and actions between characters. And a good scene turns on a change, and we're going to be talking a lot more about the nature of that change. And I'm going to be sharing with you 4 key concepts for scene writing and a 5th secret concept that we will get to at the end of the video. 4 key concepts and 1 secret concept. And if you want to proceed with this, I'd be very grateful if you would pop down just below the video and make a super thanks and reward your teacher for today with a few dollars. That will also help to encourage me to do more of this form of high value teaching here on the Science Fiction channel. Thank you very much for that. I'm eternally grateful.
They're not going away this time. It's all come undone.
We won't have to worry about that.
What are you talking about?
We're getting out of here. We're leaving.
To go where?
Anywhere we want. I got lucky. I scored.
4 key concepts for scene writing that we're going to illustrate by looking at this amazing scene between Cassian Andor and his mother, Martha Andor. The first concept is motivation. This is a bit of a cliche now when an actor might say to a director, "What's my motivation?" But that's because it's a very important part of bringing a scene to life. In episode 7 of Andor, in our key scene, Cassian and Martha have 2 conflicting motivations. Cassian comes into the scene wanting to take Martha away. With motivations, you can always phrase them in different ways. Perhaps Cassian wants to rescue Martha. It's never possible to perfectly identify in words what a motivation is. So don't try and be perfectionist about this, and don't get into arguments about what precisely the motivations are. The aim here is to understand the motivation of your character so that you can write an effective scene around them. Cassian has the motivation, something like to take Martha away, and Martha has the motivation to stay where she is. 2 conflicting motivations. And often it's this kind of conflict between 2 motivations that gives the engine for good scene writing.
What's wrong?
Just such a lot to take in.
No one knows I'm here. We take what we can carry and we disappear.
It's just such a big idea, you know. I get so tired. You surprised me.
The second of our 4 key concepts is the beat. The word beat comes from playtext, where you might have seen it being printed on the page, beat, where it usually represents a silence. But that's a silence that is trying to achieve some kind of goal or aim or motivation. So once we know the key motivation of our characters, we as human beings speak in order to fulfill some form of motivation. And each of the beats in a scene is a unit of exchange between 2 or more characters, where each character is trying to fulfill their motivation and a temporary aim or goal that is taking them towards that motivation. In our scene between Cassian and Martha, there are 9 key beats. I'm not going to outline them all here, but you can find my notes on this scene where I outline each of the 9 key beats by downloading it on the link just below this video. You may feel that the beats are slightly different. There's always some subjectivity to the beats. And that makes it a really good exercise for learning beat writing. The key to beats is understanding how people try to fulfill their aims through action and dialogue. In our scene in episode 7 of Andor, Andor enters with his motivation to make Martha leave with him. Initially, Martha is suspicious, so she says, "Who's there?" at the door. This is our first beat. Andor answers with a good-humoured, trying to calm Martha down. "So we lock the door here now, do we?" And then the scene continues beat by beat as they exchange behaviour. Cassian has a plan that they can escape together. And over the course of 2 beats, Martha doesn't just want to confront her son with what she really feels about this, so she delays. She plays for time by feigning some confusion and saying that Cassian will have to come back the next day, which Cassian agrees to. So Cassian goes off and speaks to Bix and then comes back to play out the full body of the scene, where the beats continue as Martha now decides to confront Cassian.
You haven't done much packing.
She says we can't go.
Be quiet.
What is this?
I'm not going.
What are you talking about?
I'm staying.
But it's not safe.
I know all that.
She's not going to leave with him. In fact, she doesn't think much of his plan, but she understands why Cassian would be motivated to do this, because his life has been so difficult from his early childhood losses and traumas. But Martha believes in something higher. Martha believes in the new rebellion, and she's going to stay in their hometown and in her own house, and she's going to serve the rebellion.
Take all the money you found and go and find some peace.
I won't have peace. I'll be worried about you all the time.
That's just love. Nothing you can do about that.
And then the scene ends on one of the greatest beats in contemporary sci-fi and fantasy storytelling.
I'm coming back.
Of course you are.
Where Andor, having agreed that he must leave, says, "But I'll be back." And Martha says, "Of course you will." And we'll revisit that line of dialogue when we get to our 5th and secret technique at the end.
Yeah, the garrison of Albany.
Gone a whole Imperial garrison. I'm brave enough to stick it out here.
The 3rd of our 4 key concepts for scene writing are turning points. You'll often hear professional screenwriters talking about turning a scene. And this is the way that a scene in a story produces a significant change in the story and for its characters. It turns them from one state that they were in to a new state that they are entering. One of the reasons why our scene in episode 7 of Andor is so well written is because it contains 3 significant turning points. And we're going to look at those in a bit more detail after I introduce the 4th of our key concepts for scene writing, which is levels of change. A scene changes something significant about the story, and that change can happen in many different ways. And these are usually talked about in 3 key levels of change. You can have external change. Something in the outside world of the story has changed. You can have social change. Something in the relationships between the characters has changed. And you can have inner change. Something within the character, most often in their self-perception, has changed. And this scene in Andor manages all 3 of these levels of change. The first turning point comes in the second beat of the scene, and it's an external change where Cassian has been planning on returning home to see Marva, and she informs him that he was betrayed by another person in the community where they live together. And this external change means that Cassian now can't stay with Marva. And this externally changes Cassian's state. He might have stayed in the township. Now he's going to have to move on. The second turning point comes in the 7th beat, where Marva confronts Cassian with the fact that she doesn't respect his plan, and really she doesn't respect him.
You can't beat them, Marva.
Not if I run away. You have a different path, Cass, and I am not judging you. Everything you've been through, everything that was taken away from you before you even started.
And this is a social, a relational level of change, where the relationship between Cassian and Marva as mother and adopted son goes through a fundamental change that it's not going to be able to come back from. And the third and final turning point in the scene comes in the 9th beat, this amazing exchange of dialogue where Cassian experiences a profound internal change to his character that will drive him through the rest of season 1 of Andor, where he's always thought of himself as a victim of circumstances.
I'm coming back.
Of course you are.
But in this one exchange of dialogue where Cassian says, "I'll be back," and Marva says, "I know you will," Cassian realizes that he's irresponsible. He's going to leave his mother behind because he's scared of the consequences of staying. And this is a profound internal change for Cassian as a character. If you want to practice your own scene writing based on today's Writing Wednesday, I'm going to give you 2 very quick practice exercises. The first of these, you can download my notes on the scene from episode 7 of season 1 of Andor, and see if my notes on that scene align with your own understanding of what the character's motivations are, where the major beats in the scene fall. I've identified 9 beats. You may disagree with that. What are the key turning points in the scene? I found 3 of those. You may think there are more. And in those turning points, what the levels of change are. Inner, social, or external, or you may find your own levels of change as well. Finally, I promised a 5th secret concept that you can add to your own scene writing. And this builds on the motivation of the characters, where we've spoken so far about their conscious motivation. But the real power in the scene between Marva and Cassian is in their unconscious motivations. Cassian has come in with the conscious motivation to take Marva away, But on an unconscious level, he wants comfort from his mother. Marva wants to stay where she is. That's her conscious motivation. Her unconscious motivation is to wake Cassian up. She's going to deny him the comfort that he seeks by first not going away, and then showing that she not only disrespects his plan, but really she no longer respects him. And then finally, in that final exchange of dialogue, and just before it, where Marva says,
Stop searching for your sister. It's a fantasy. There were no survivors on Canary.
she's trying to show Cassian his own fantasies, his own delusions. She's doing the tough love of a responsible mother. And then in that brilliant exchange of dialogue at the end, why is it so good, just those two lines? Because they're spoken from their conscious motivations. I'll be back. Of course you will. But they're expressing their unconscious understanding of the situation, because really Cassian is saying, I won't be back. And Marva is saying, I know you won't. That is beautiful, dramatic writing. I don't think that any other Star Wars story has ever had writing of this depth or complexity before. A final note on this. Why am I saying that? Because I think it's important to understand there is good writing in different forms earlier in the Star Wars saga, but there isn't this kind of dramatic writing that comes from the tradition, the thousands of years of theatre writing that have developed these techniques and concepts that we've been talking about today. Very often in Star Wars and lots of other sci-fi and fantasy writing, the lack of these techniques is covered over with irony or just funny, witty banter. And irony and banter can be really entertaining. But if you want deeper writing, if you want to achieve the kind of power in scene writing that we see in Andor, you have to deploy techniques of this kind. Thank you very much for joining in with today's Writing Wednesday. My name is Damien Walter. If you've enjoyed this, I'm going to try and do it every Wednesday. We'll see if I keep to that commitment or not. Thank you very much, and goodbye.